Hi, I'm Amy Stasiewicz, and welcome to The Minutes. Thanks for tuning in. It's great to have you along on The Minutes for the week of July 6th. This is a City of Thunder Bay podcast. The Minutes looks at what happened at Thunder Bay City Council this past week. You can find The Minutes wherever you get your podcasts, including our YouTube channel and our website, thunderbay.ca/The Minutes. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an update. This week, City Council met on Tuesday, July 7th. We'll go over the key highlights from this meeting, and later I'll be joined by Andrea Morrison, the city's Director of Finance. So let's get started. Like all council and standing committee meetings, the meeting began with a land acknowledgement. City Council meetings open with the national anthem performed by a guest or local group. If you're interested in being one of the performers, you can find out more at thunderbay.ca/council. First up was a public meeting about a zoning bylaw amendment and draft plan approval of a subdivision on the northwest corner of 15th Side Road and Mountain Road. Planning Services is recommending approval of a zoning amendment and draft plan to allow a 41-lot rural residential subdivision. The proposal has been reduced from earlier versions following technical review and community feedback. The plan includes 41 single detached lots, new roads, stormwater facilities, open space, municipal water service, and private septic systems. Environmentally sensitive areas, including lands around Mosquito Creek, would be rezoned to environmental protection to preserve natural features. The residential portion would be rezoned to allow smaller rural lots with a minimum lot size of 3,000 square meters and a required 8-meter no-build buffer between existing homes. Planning staff reviewed environmental, traffic, servicing, and other technical studies and determined that development can proceed without negative impacts. There were 9 area residents who attended the meeting and spoke to the item. In the end, council approved the zoning amendment. Next was the consent agenda items, which included minutes of previous council and standing committee meetings and other committee and board minutes. Nothing was removed for discussion, and all consent agenda items were approved by council. Next was items brought to open session from closed session. There was board appointments for the Waterfront BIA Board of Directors, which were approved by council. Okay, now on to the reports of administration. The first report was about the 2025 operating budget financial status and an update on the reserve fund. The City of Thunder Bay finished 2025 with a favorable operating result, reporting $11.5 million surplus in tax-supported operations. Much of that surplus was driven by higher than expected investment income and additional childcare funding. Because the city's reserve is already at its target level, the full $11.5 million will be transferred to the Capital General Reserve Fund and may help support future capital projects in the 2027 and 2028 budgets. The report also highlights positive results in several rate-supported programs, including the landfill, waterworks, and water waste services. Those surpluses will be transferred to their respective reserve funds to support future infrastructure needs. Administration is also recommending restoring a $55,000 contribution to the McKellar Mall Reserve Fund that was temporarily suspended during the budget process last year. Finally, the report recommends creating a new Health and Safety Water Stream Reserve Fund. This reserve will support projects related to water, wastewater, stormwater, flooding, and infrastructure, helping the city maintain and improve critical services. Overall, the report reflects a strong financial position and continued investment in Thunder Bay's long-term infrastructure and reserves. Our Minutes guest later today will dive more into this topic. In the end, council approved the report. The next report of administration was about the city's 2027 budget process. The report recommends approval of the budget calendar for reviewing the 2027 operating budget and the 2027 to 2028 capital budget. Because 2026 is a municipal election year, administration will prepare the budget using the city's long-range financial plan as a guide. That includes a minimum 3% tax levy increase and a 5% increase to the capital levy that supports infrastructure. The new City Council will receive their proposed budgets in January 2027, with budget review meetings taking place in late January and early February. Final budget approval is scheduled for February 16th, 2027. The report also notes ongoing financial pressures, including inflation, labor costs, materials, services, and infrastructure needs. Committee discussions focus on the importance of continued investment in things like roads and other critical infrastructure while maintaining a balanced, long-term approach to city finances. Residents will also have the opportunity to review the proposed budget and provide their feedback through public engagements and surveys. In the end, Council approved the 2027 budget process. The next report of administration was on the naming rights for the Current River Arena. Administration is recommending that Current River Arena be renamed the iTech Community Arena as part of the new naming rights agreement with the local company iTech Equipment. The agreement would be in place for 10 years, which is the industry standard for municipal facility naming rights. During that time, the city will receive $200,000 in sponsorship revenue to help support the arena's operating costs. The naming rights opportunity was approved by Council in 2025 as part of the city's naming rights implementation plan. The proposed name was reviewed through the city's naming policies and no concerns were identified. Naming rights provide an opportunity to generate additional revenue while helping maintain community facilities and services. In the end, Council approved the name change. The next report was from Realty Services about a vested property rehabilitation. The city is recommending a $1.46 million investment in its vacant and dilapidated building program to help clean up properties that have been abandoned and failed to sell through the tax sale process. The funding would come from the Vested Property Rehabilitation Reserve Fund and would be used to either rehabilitate or demolish properties that the city has acquired through vesting. The goal is to take vacant, unsafe, and deteriorating properties and get them ready for future use. By removing problem buildings and improving these sites, the city can help improve neighborhoods, support redevelopment, and create opportunities for new housing and investment. The funding is expected to help address about 3 properties in the short term and supports the city's broader efforts to bring underused land and buildings back into productive use. This work supports the city's Smart Growth Action Plan by helping transform vacant and underused properties into assets that can contribute to housing, economic development, and stronger community. In the end, Council approved the report. Next was a report on an administrative update related to the Ontario Municipal Employees Retirement System, or OMERS. OMERS now requires municipalities and local boards, such as police services boards, to have their own separate participation bylaw. The city's current bylaw are outdated and reflect an old structure where participation was shared. To stay compliant with current OMERS requirements, administration is recommending that Council repeal the old bylaws and adopt a new, updated OMERS participation bylaw effective July 19, 2026. While the City and Thunder Bay Police Service Board will each have their own participation structure, the city will continue to provide administrative support for OMERS processes, including enrollment, reporting, and contributions. Overall, this report is a housekeeping measure that keeps the city's pension administration up to date with OMERS requirements. Council approved the bylaw change. The next report of administration was about advocacy priorities for the Intergovernmental Affairs Committee. At its June meeting, the committee took another look at the city's advocacy priorities. Essentially, the key issues Thunder Bay will continue to champion with the provincial and federal governments. The discussion focused on making sure the city's advocacy efforts support the goals of the Smart Growth Action Plan, while also continuing to address important social challenges in our community. The committee identified 7 priority areas. These include efforts to secure the former Lakehead Psychiatric Hospital lands for future development, obtain funding for industrial and commercial-ready lands, and support major infrastructure projects that help enable housing growth. Other priorities include seeking affordable housing funding through Build Canada Homes, securing funding for a new Mission Island bridge, and exploring options to help the city manage costs that are imposed by certain agencies, boards, and commissions. Committee members also stressed that advocacy around social issues remains very important, particularly when it comes to the homelessness. The idea is to focus the city's advocacy efforts on initiatives that can help grow Thunder Bay, attract investment, create housing opportunities, and improve quality of life for residents. In the end, Council approved the report, and it will be reviewed again by the next term of Council in early 2027. The next report of administration was about restricted acts provisions. With the 2026 municipal election coming up in October, there may be a period where City Council is limited in what decisions it can make. This is something called lame duck period, and happens when enough members of the current council are not returning for the next term. To make sure city business can continue without unnecessary delays, City administration is recommending that council temporarily give the city manager authority to deal with certain matters that would otherwise be restricted during that time. The goal is to simply keep important and time-sensitive business moving, especially where council has already provided direction. Any decision made under this temporary authority would involve consultation with senior city staff, and a report would be brought back to council in early 2027, outlining any actions that were taken. This is a process the city has used in previous election years, and it's intended to ensure things continue running smoothly during the transition from one council to the next. Overall, this report is about maintaining day-to-day business while complying with provincial election rules. After some discussion, council approved the conditions. The final report of administration recommends adopting a new signing authority bylaw that would update and simplify how documents are signed on behalf of the city. Right now, signing authority is spread across multiple bylaws and policies that have built up over time. The new bylaw would bring everything together into one clear framework, making it easier to know who can sign different types of documents. The goal is to improve efficiency for routine day-to-day city business, such as agreements, permits, and other operational documents. It does not give administration the ability to make new policy decisions or bypass council approval where it's required. Major decisions, significant transactions, and matters that must legally remain with council would continue to come before council for approval. The report also includes safeguards to ensure proper oversight, accountability, and financial controls remain in place. Overall, this is an administrative update designed to modernize processes, reduce delays, and help the city operate more efficiently while keeping important decision-making authority where it belongs. In the end, council approved the new bylaw. Council also requested that city administration look at including Granite Road repaving in the 2027 capital budget. This will be considered and discussed as part of the budget deliberations in the months ahead. Next, council approved a series of bylaws. The meeting was then adjourned. Okay, so that's it for city council updates. Next, I'll be chatting with Andrea Morrison, the city's director of finance, to talk about the upcoming budget and get more insight into the city's reserve funds. The city's director of finance, Andrea Morrison, is in the Minute Studio to break down some of the financial highlights discussed at the latest city council meeting and talk about how the city's finances are tracking. Hey, Andrea, thanks for joining me.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
Okay, so we won't get too technical, but I think this is important because, the budget is, or finances in general, it's not something we all understand. So this will be great. Okay, so what does the 2025 financial report tell us about how the city is doing financially?
So overall, we did have a significant favorable variance this year, the 11.5 million. However, a significant portion of that was related to an unusual realization of gains from a transition of our investments. So backing that out and backing out the childcare favorable variance due to a funding change, we actually came in quite close to budget. So overall, it demonstrates that we've done a reasonably good job within the budgeting and forecasting process. There's a significant amount of operational variables, trends, and assumptions that are made. So we do really aim to come in relatively close to budget. So I think that we did accomplish that this year.
Yeah, definitely. That being in the green, as they say, is always good. Okay, so you talked about this substantial surplus. What helped make that happen? And obviously, this doesn't happen every year. So can you just explain a bit about that?
Yeah, so it's a little bit of a technical one. So we invest through the Prudent Investor Program through one investment, one joint investment board. So they transitioned to a new OCIO, Outsourced Chief Investment Officer model. So our transition happened in March of 2025. Council did approve that process the prior year.
Yeah.
So in order to transfer to that program, we had to liquidate our existing holdings with one and then reinvest in products with our OCIO, who's PH&N institutional, into a new Prudent Investor Program. So this realized gains. So it isn't really a surplus similar to like an operating surplus. It's just it is an accounting thing. We've had the gains. They just got realized because we cashed out our investments.
Right. Okay. So what happens to those gains now?
So the process for the reserve and reserve funds. So we did an update to the reserve and reserve fund policy in 2023. So when there are favorable or unfavorable variances, and council approved that in fall of 23. When there are favorable or unfavorable, that policy actually dictates where the funds go. So there are target balances for certain reserves and reserve funds. Like stabilization, for example, we're supposed to have 10 million uncommitted.
Okay.
So we did, as part of this, that got topped up to that balance.
Yeah.
There's certain other ones that have target balances. So those get distributed that way. There are a number of other ones that are specific, like winter control, for example. We had a slight favorable. That goes there. Might be covering 26, depending on where we end up.
Yeah,
you know, a year with lots of snow.
Yeah.
So they ultimately get distributed. The vast majority of this year's favorable did go to Capital General, which will allow us to prioritize and invest in capital according to the intended use of those reserve funds too. So it gives us more flexibility, but it is ultimately available to us.
Right. And is there a lot of reserve funds?
Yeah, there's quite a few.
Okay.
And part of the intention of the reserve fund policy was to consolidate some of the prior. There actually used to be more.
Okay.
I think the final number now, it's over 50. We've added a number of new ones in recent years.
Right.
Don't have the exact one off the top of my
head.
No,
that's fine. Yeah.
So there are quite a few, and we don't want to have too many because then it can get complicated.
Okay.
Yeah, so they do have intended uses. Like stabilization is intended for if there's an unexpected variance.
Yeah.
On the negative side, there's things like I'm trying to think of another example. There's some transit specific ones.
Yeah.
There's quite a few different ones, and then the reserves are slightly different than reserve funds, and that's a whole process too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm just curious. Yeah. So like we were talking about transit. So say like you needed 3 new buses in a year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the Capital Transit Reserve Fund. It also, if there's a favorable variance operating in transit, it goes to that reserve fund. So if we have a favorable variance for transit, it's going there, and then we're able to use that. And we've been able to use it in recent years to leverage a lot of the federal and provincial funding. So it's actually a good way for us to kind of reinvest. So the dollars that we have, if it is favorable, are being used to benefit the services.
Right. It's like a security blanket.
Yeah.
On a much bigger scale.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. What projects or priorities could benefit from these positive financial results like in the future?
Honestly, any could. I mean, anything that could be utilizing. So if I just use Capital General as an example, anything benefits from our ability to have additional funds available.
Yeah.
So if there were to be a new funding stream available, we like to be able to have some unencumbered funds that we're able to leverage. Because anytime that there's usually a funding program, we have to have a municipal contribution. That could be 50%, it could be 30%, but to have that money available that we don't have to then cancel another project in the budget, it gives us we're better positioned to do that. And I know we look at that with Renew Thunder Bay too. There's some specific requirements for that reserve fund, which includes leveraging multiple layers of funding.
Yeah.
But really, anytime we have the funding, the money available in the reserve funds, it's beneficial for us.
Yeah.
It also helps us for our credit rating because we have a strong reserve position. That's one of the reasons they've noted when S&P's done our credit rating recently. We have the AA plus with a stable outlook.
Yeah.
So that's a strength for our municipality, which is higher than some other ones of a similar size.
Right. That's amazing. Okay. So let's talk about the upcoming 2027 budget. How is your team preparing for the budget right now? And can you just explain a bit about the overall process? Obviously, there's like capital and operating, but.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a significant undertaking.
Yeah.
That involves all areas of the corporation, primarily the budget team. And we have slightly adjusted how the budget team reports now. So it's a little bit of a new approach. So right now, across the corporation, people are working on their capital budgets. So that's usually done more at a divisional level. Each commissioner approves it. They work with their budget resources. Then that goes into the budget team. We review, and then it goes to ELT. And then ELT kind of discusses any priorities, and then we kind of settle on what the final version that goes to council for approval looks like. So we tend to have the capital piece is due midsummer.
Oh,
and then
whoa.
operating is, then people are starting on the operating piece now too.
Yeah.
So it's a similar process, lots of different variables too. Like we're dealing with things like wage increases, contract prices for services, inflation, factoring in operational efficiencies or what the impact of changes that they've made throughout the year.
Yeah.
Things like utility rates, consumption. There's a lot of different pieces that get factored in. So similar process, the feedback goes to get all input to our system. Then there's review internal, goes to ELT, and then ultimately to council.
Right. With the new city council taking office in November, since there's an election in October, how does that affect the budget process?
So it does change the process from this past year where we had the capital budget approved in November. It almost goes back to how our typical process was, where we usually had it, the process starting in January into February. So we will be kind of going back to that process as council won't be effectively in place at that point.
Yeah.
So we will be having capital and operating along the same time. There still will be separate capital versus operating meetings, though. I believe that's the plan right now. It is a transition, and especially with a number of the councillors that are not returning, we know there will be a number of new councillors. So it is a big learning curve for someone coming in. That's one of the first things they get to look at.
Yeah.
We do orientation with council when they start. But it will be a lot of information to digest, I believe, for a new counselor for sure.
Right. It gets serious fast. Okay. So what are some of the biggest pressures the city is facing as it prepares for the budget?
I think it's similar to the last number of years. Inflationary cost pressures are affecting everybody across all the different sectors, and some more dramatically related to the municipal service basket of goods as opposed to like a household. We're monitoring all different things like, fuel costs are kind of top of mind now with all the with the recent spikes there, utility rates, like wage increases with collective agreements. There's a lot, numerous things. So, and then there's just changes in legislative requirements. Sometimes we don't have a choice in terms of what we have to do as a service provider or as a city. So, and there always seems to be something new that comes every year, no matter what you kind of anticipate. But
okay, yeah. So, finishing off, is there anything we didn't cover today that maybe you want to chat about?
Yeah, so we will be offering or continuing to offer opportunities for people to give feedback on the budget process. We've been at a number of community events. We'll be at the Thunder Bay Talks in the fall, and we'll also be trying to attend a number of the community events throughout the summer. To be announced still, but so we really encourage people to participate and share their opinions. There will also be budget surveys closer to the actual budget deliberation process as well. Okay,
perfect. Well, thanks so much for keeping the City of Thunder Bay finances on track, to you and your team, and thanks for taking time to chat with me.
Thanks for having me.
That's it for this week's episode of The Minutes. A big thank you to Andrea Morrison for joining us. And as always, thanks for listening. If you want more information about City Council agendas or minutes, visit thunderbay.ca/council. You can catch the minutes every week wherever you get your podcasts, on our YouTube channel or on our website at thunderbay.ca/theminutes. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button so you never miss an update. I'm Amy. Thanks again for listening to The Minutes, and have a great week.